It was supposed to be the best night of their lives. A Friday evening in July, a night when the heat of summer clung to the air like a second skin, and the neon glow of Ferris wheels and roller coasters promised thrill, laughter, and escape. Three teenagers walked through the towering gates of Brightwater Amusement Park, a place that, for decades, had been the crown jewel of their small Midwestern town. None of them could have guessed that by sunrise, their names would be whispered in panic across neighborhoods, written in headlines, and etched forever into the town's dark history. Because that night, they didn't come home. And for 11 long years, their families lived in the crushing uncertainty of not knowing, were they alive, were they dead, had they run away, or had something unimaginable happened within the park's shadows? What no one knew back then, what the police couldn't uncover, what the community refused to believe, was that one man had seen something. A ride mechanic. A worker who, for more than a decade, carried a secret so terrifying he buried it deep inside himself. Until one day, guilt cracked him open. This is the story of the teenagers who vanished at Brightwater Amusement Park, and the chilling revelation that surfaced over a decade later. They were just kids. 17-year-old Lila Monroe, the kind of girl who always seemed a step away from leaving her small town behind. She was ambitious, a little rebellious, with dark hair that she wore in waves, and a journal full of plans to study film in New York. Then there was Tyler Briggs, 18, tall and lanky with a crooked smile and a skateboard practically glued to his side. Tyler wasn't the best student, but he was loyal, funny, and hopelessly devoted to his friends. And the youngest of the trio, 16-year-old Emily Harris, shy but brilliant, who carried a disposable camera everywhere she went, snapping candid photos that froze moments in time. On July 15, 2012, the three of them headed to Brightwater Amusement Park. The park had been around for over 50 years, and though some of the paint was peeling, and some rides looked like they should have been retired long ago, to teenagers in a sleepy town, it was magic. Roller coasters rattled and screamed into the night sky, cotton candy spun into clouds of pink and blue, and loud pop songs echoed across the midway. Lila, Tyler, and Emily were seen together around 8 p.m. They bought wristbands, rode the tilt-a-whirl, and shared funnel cake dusted in powdered sugar. At 9:15, they were spotted near the Phantom Drop, the park's tallest and most notorious ride, a towering freefall that lifted riders 15 stories before plunging them downward in stomach-wrenching silence. That was the last confirmed sighting of them. When the park closed at midnight, and the crowds poured out under the buzzing neon sign, the three teenagers were nowhere to be found. Their cars were still in the parking lot. Their phones went unanswered. And their parents, frantic by morning, called the police. The investigation that followed consumed the entire town. Police combed the park, interviewing workers and managers. Every ride was inspected, every storage closet and maintenance hallway searched. Cadaver dogs were brought in, helicopters circled the grounds, and the lake beside the park was dredged. Nothing. Not a shred of evidence. Brightwater Amusement Park, once a place of joy, became a haunted symbol of unanswered questions. People whispered theories. Maybe the teens had snuck out, hitchhiked, and run away. Maybe they'd been lowered into a car by a stranger in the parking lot. Maybe something darker had happened, something inside the park itself. But with no leads, the case went cold. The families mourned, but they never buried. Because there were no bodies. Only silence. And then, for 11 years, the story slept. Until a man named Eddie Rowe finally spoke. Eddie wasn't anyone special. He was a mechanic at Brightwater in 2012, in his mid-30s back then, working long shifts fixing rides no one wanted to shut down for maintenance. He was quiet, kept to himself, and lived alone in a cramped trailer at the edge of town. When police interviewed him during the initial investigation, he said what most employees said: he hadn't seen the teens, hadn't noticed anything unusual, just another busy night at the park. But that wasn't the truth. In 2023, after years of silence, Eddie showed up at the local sheriff's office, trembling, eyes bloodshot, and said 6 words that would reopen everything. "I saw them go inside there." The sheriff leaned forward. "Inside where?" And Eddie whispered, "The maintenance tunnels." Underneath Brightwater Amusement Park ran a network of old service tunnels. Not many people knew about them, except long-term staff. They were originally built in the 70s for electrical wiring, plumbing, and quick access between rides without employees walking through crowds. Most of them had been sealed off in later years, considered unsafe. But to Eddie, they were no secret. He worked down there often. On the night of July 15, 2012, Eddie claimed he was down in the tunnels near the Phantom Drop. Around 9:20 p.m., he heard something above him: footsteps, muffled voices, laughter that didn't sound like workers. Curious, he crept toward the nearest ladder and peeked up through a maintenance hatch. What he saw would stay with him forever. The three teenagers, Lila, Tyler, and Emily, were standing near the ride, looking hesitant, glancing around nervously. And someone else was with them. A man Eddie didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black Brightwater staff jacket that Eddie swore he'd never seen before. The man was speaking to the teens in a low voice, gesturing toward the maintenance door that led underground. Lila looked uncertain. Tyler seemed to ask a question. Emily hugged her camera to her chest. Then, one by one, they followed him through the door. And Eddie did nothing. He told himself it was probably harmless. Maybe the guy was showing them something off limits. Maybe they'd get in trouble for sneaking where they didn't belong. He didn't want to interfere, didn't want to get involved. So he stayed quiet. The next morning, when news spread of the disappearance, Eddie panicked. He should have said something. But fear clamped down on him, fear of being blamed, fear of losing his job, fear of the truth. So he stayed silent. For 11 years. And now, finally, the secret was out. The sheriff stared at Eddie across the table, trying to measure the weight of his words. Why speak now? Why after all these years? Eddie's answer was simple: I can't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see that door shutting behind them. Detectives immediately reopened the case. Search teams went back into the park, this time with blueprints of the tunnel system. What they found was chilling. Deep inside the sealed-off maintenance corridors, beyond a rusted steel door bolted shut with a heavy chain, they discovered a hidden chamber. Old electrical panels lined the walls, thick dust coated the floor, and in the corner, a set of 3 folding chairs sat in eerie silence. Beside them was a broken disposable camera. The film inside was ruined. But the implication was terrifying. Had the teenagers been held here? Had something happened in this underground room, just steps below the laughter of the crowds above? Before I reveal what came next, let me pause for just a moment. If you've been drawn into this mystery so far, if you feel that knot in your stomach tightening the way I did when I first heard this story, then take a second to hit the like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you're new here, subscribe for more true crime mysteries just like this one. Now, back to Brightwater. The discovery of the chamber reignited the town's obsession. Reporters swarmed, families gathered at the park gates, begging for answers. Police questioned every employee who had worked that night in 2012, combing through old rosters. But there was a problem. No one could identify the man in the black staff jacket. His name wasn't on any employee records. No one remembered seeing a tall, broad-shouldered worker on the Phantom Drop crew. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere. Some believed he was an outsider who had stolen a uniform. Others suspected he had inside help. But one detail made everything worse. When detectives examined the old maintenance door Eddie described, they found something carved faintly into the metal with a knife. 3 letters, L, T, E. Lila. Tyler. Emily. Theories exploded. Had the teens tried to leave a mark before something happened to them? Had they been locked inside? And then came the darkest possibility of all, that the man wasn't a stranger, but someone trusted. Someone who knew the tunnels better than anyone. Someone who could make people disappear without a trace. Weeks turned into months, and still, no bodies were found. No arrests were made. Eddie Rowe's confession changed everything, but also nothing. He had seen them go in, but not what happened after. He couldn't, or wouldn't, name the man. Today, the case remains open. Brightwater Amusement Park shut down in 2015, just 3 years after the disappearances, and now it sits in silence, overgrown with weeds, rides rusting like skeletons against the skyline. The tunnels are padlocked, the chamber sealed. But in the minds of everyone who remembers that night, the same question lingers like a curse: what happened to Lila, Tyler, and Emily after that door closed? And perhaps more importantly, why did Eddie wait so long to speak? The tragedy of Brightwater is not just the loss of 3 young lives, but the haunting truth that sometimes answers come too late. Families wait in agony, communities crumble under the weight of suspicion, and secrets rot in silence until someone finally breaks. Maybe one day, more will be uncovered. Maybe someone out there knows the man in the black jacket, or maybe Eddie himself knows more than he admitted. Until then, the tunnels remain a graveyard of questions, and the story of the vanished teenagers continues to echo in the dark. If you found yourself holding your breath during this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what do you think happened in those tunnels? Was it an inside job, or something darker no one's willing to face? Because as the families know too well, sometimes the scariest monsters don't hide in the shadows. They walk among us, wearing uniforms, carrying keys, smiling as they lead the way. And the door closes behind them.